Welcome, everyone. I'm so excited you're here today with us live and pre-recorded on AwakeTVNetwork.com. Today, in our second episode of Hidden Superpowers, we are going to explore the world of navigating the minds of telepathy. This is one of my favorite subjects to talk about as far as superpowers are concerned. Really, let's begin with, what is telepathy? What does that mean to you? To me, it means speaking mind to mind, heart to heart, soul to soul, being to being, body to body. This is how we share communication in a non-verbal or non-physical way, so to speak. It actually is physical, it's just different. We're speaking through brainwave frequencies. And so when we're experiencing that, it's when two or more people are communicating coherently with each other, mind to mind, heart to heart, exchanging internal and non-spoken, non-orated languaging. In this idea, we're going to speak to each other in ways that we can understand each other. So in this depiction, this person here on the right wants to share a concentric circles that keep opening. And this person over here, though, might experience this a whole lot. So it's a similar, but not exactly. So in this idea, we're going to explore how we can get more accurate with each other as far as communicating with telepathy. It's a lot of fun. So sometimes it's not that fun. And sometimes when we hear each other's mind chatter or ideas of what it is we want to share with each other, sometimes those thoughts and feelings can be disordered, disorganized, distorted, and then we don't want to necessarily hear it. So we're going to go through these little steps to clear up the discordances that we could have with telepathy. How do we begin to experience telepathy, right? For many of us, it starts with clarity of thought. For the speaking and the listening by the person that initiates that telepathic communication. How do we create clarity of thought? Now this goes into a little bit of a deeper issue. When we become aware of our consciousness challenges, that is those discords, those unfriendly, unspoken, undesirable ways of thinking, we experience that which could cloud our clarity. And when we have clouded clarity or confusion, what we want to do is we want to conflict resolve them. So we're going to go through a couple of, or a few, consciousness challenges. And my higher guidance shared with me and my collaborator who was helping me with these graphics, Annie Kalakar, thank you very much, that what we wanted to do was share in the idea of loner consciousness. And what do we mean by loner consciousness as far as a challenge to communicate telepathy to someone effectively? Well, when you think about it, here we have a different depiction of why being a loner is challenging to our consciousness. First of all, it diminishes the opportunity even to connect telepathically when we feel all alone. But specifically, I wanted to bring up this one. If we have a belief that, or let's say I have a belief that I can do telepathy, I can send experiences, I can send thoughts, and I can receive them from others in multitudes of ways. And if I have a belief with that I'm the only one in the environment can do it, then I'm going to diminish my ability to connect with the other person that I want to send telepathic communication to. So does that make sense? You know, it's like if I'm all alone in the world with telepathy and no one else can do it, then I'm not going to have a very good time expressing and exchanging communication with the other person telepathically. So that's one of the consciousness challenges that we can have. So I have to diminish my idea that I'm all alone in this process and that there are others, hundreds, thousands, millions, maybe even billions, that can speak telepathically and listen telepathically for other people. I think in lots of ways we've all experienced communicating with loved ones and people we care about. We feel more deeply connected to their thinking, to their emotions, to their thought process, beliefs. And we tend to communicate that way. Another consciousness that we could have is grudge consciousness. I can tell you, if I have a grudge, for example, and I want to send a telepathic communication with somebody, that communication is going to be littered with grudge or want to get back at or want to be mean to. And so what we want to do is we want to clear these consciousness challenges so that the communication is very clear. Because I can tell you right away, even if the receiver is telepathic and you have littered your communication with grudge consciousness, they're not going to want to receive it. They're going to go like this again, right? So that's why we have to recognize that. How are we sending it? And is our communication, you know, embedded with a consciousness challenge? The other one that can be is false pride. This idea where I'm better than you. I'm more righteous than you. I'm more elevated than you. I have a higher frequency than you. I'm more telepathic than you. When we have these senses of false pride, it diminishes radically the ability for the receiver to experience your thoughts. So what we do is when we have these kinds of consciousness challenges, and there's hundreds of others, is we want to conflict resolve this process. And so, for example, we'll go back to the loner consciousness. I acknowledge I have a conflict with feeling all alone in my ability to telepathically communicate to others. I release all my self-judgments that I can't talk to others, that they can't understand me or know what it is I would like to share with them. I forgive my judgments of myself that that's true. That starts to diminish the energy between myself and me, first of all, to feel that I can do this. I have the confidence to be able to move forward, to communicate telepathically. And then proclaiming sovereignty is this idea is I'm all done with this idea of being all alone in the world with telepathy. I think hence the reason why bringing this TV show forward and this opportunity for everyone to learn about creating telepathy in their lives, because it can be very valuable. And so I am complete with the idea that I'm all alone in the world, that is the only one that has telepathy, because I know for sure that's not true. And it's very fun, very experiential to share telepathy with another person. And the next is to shine my truth, is to recognize that I'm not alone in this process. I shine my superpower, my true nature, and I can share that with others, and I can support how to create them hearing what it is I have to share. With this idea, we wanted to share with you all that through our website, leapofconsciousness.com, we have a conscious choice challenge, a gift for you that we spent about 2,000 hours creating 101 different consciousness challenges that challenge our very experience in how we share with others. And I invite you to sign up for this. It's free. We would love to receive your feedback and understand how we can share more consciousness challenges with the world so that we can have clear thought with each other and clear emotions and clear ways of really sharing our true nature with each other. Now I wanted to speak about, which is kind of a cool idea, is creating telepathic speaking to allow the receiver to land the listening. And what do we mean by that? Right? It can be like a jigsaw puzzle, right? A big maze. When I have a clear thought, how am I going to get it over to that other person or persons, a group of people that I'd like to receive the information I would like to share? And that information can just be an emotion. It can be love. We share that way as well. And what is that love? A lot of times when you send love, people are really fascinated and they love to know why or what it is that you love about them. I love your hair. I love the way you touch my life. You know, we can send an emotion, but sending a very clear thought with it is very powerful. And it does land listening for many people, even when they may not even consider themselves telepathic. So when we are having clarity with what we want to say, it's crucial for that listening to be heard clearly by the recipient of our telepathic signaling. Now let's talk about initiating a telepathic communication. It first has to start with an idea, right? Get those cogs turning in the mind. So we get to turn on ourselves, right? And clear ourselves with our consciousness challenge, really have clarity of thought of what it is we want to do. And then we would like to support the lighting up of the receiver, right? So that it's very clear and they can understand what it is we want to share. Once we clear the content of what we want to share, begin to intend the transmission with a directed thought. So sometimes, right, it's fairly important here to distinguish when we initiate a telepathic communication. It's helpful when you're very effective with sending communication. It's very helpful to become clear first before you send it. Otherwise, it can send out kind of garbly. Or, you know, when we start to formulate a thought, we have bits and pieces of information. And we talk about that as access points. And inside the access points, I call them, where would I like to get information? So let's say I would like to talk to my mother. And my mother has transitioned out of her body. So we can also talk to people outside of the body that are in a spiritual form. We can do lots of different things. So if I were wanting to talk with my mother, I would want to get clarity of thought, right? And so instead of having mishmash, just thoughts and pieces all around, I get clear with my thought and I connect with my mother. And what I want to do is share with her how much I adore her, I love her, and I so appreciate her supporting me, bringing me into the world to experience this and share this opportunity with everything and everyone in the world. Right? So that's where we become more clear about the type of communication we'd like to receive. Right? And then when it's very clear, even a person that's living, right? Another person, let's say I would like to talk to my sister. So when, for example, she's in a different state across the country. So I would like to share and get clear with my thoughts. Thank you for being my little sister. I so love you dearly. And every moment that you're in my life, you're cherished and loved. Right? And then we send that communication very clearly. Isn't that a lot of fun? It impacts people's lives very deeply. So let's talk for a few minutes about the challenges of telepathy, because there are quite a few. The first is that our thoughts and feelings are not private to our own experience, right? That's a big one to swallow. So if we run around the world with unconscious thoughts that aren't so pretty, like let's say for my sister as an example, let's say I go, I hate my sister. I hate my sister. I can't even pretend it, right? Because I don't hate her. But let's say that I did truly hate her. She would actually feel it, even if she may not consider herself to be telepathic. she may feel that hatred or that upset or that irritation. It might even affect her so much so that she might call me and wonder, what's going on? What's happening with you? And I'll be like, nothing's going on. Because I had all these unconscious thoughts in the back of my mind that I didn't like her or I hated her, right? So what we get to do is we get to create a new mindset. We get to change the framework, and we get to allow and access our unconscious thoughts and feelings so that we get very clear with our thoughts and feelings. And so this brings up a very interesting challenge, right? Because lots of kids that I work with and lots of kids that I communicate with, both telepathically and orally, or visually on Zoom or other media platforms, what happens is the kids and or the parents don't like telepathy because they want their thoughts and feelings to be private to their own experience. So what I suggest is I think everyone should have the opportunity to think what they want, even if it's not very pretty, even if it's kind of ugly or negative. Because a lot of times when we have negative thoughts and feelings, it's spurred up by a belief that we have about what's going on in our lives. And we're not really clear maybe sometimes about those beliefs. And so we have an emotional response, and then we feel distorted or confused or outright angry, and we recognize it and know it. And so what if it's okay to be that way? And what if we can recognize that we turn off of our telepathy? Say, I'm having a negative thought, I'm having a negative feeling, and I really want to understand what's creating those negative thoughts and feelings. So instead of suppressing them, let that be, but no, and say, no, all telepathic communications turn off. I'm going to create my own little private Idaho, my own little auric field. And I'm going to, it's kind of like, going to your room and closing your door and thinking about what it is you want to think about. So you're having a moment of internal privacy. And in that internal privacy, you get to think more clearly about what it is that's bothering you, or that's irritating you, or creating confusion. And we don't have to send it out to the world, right? Because when we send it out to the world, quite honestly, the receiver in some way or another receives it, and they don't know what to do with it, and they feel really weird, and they don't understand what's going on a lot of times because it's a distorted thinking pattern. Does that make sense? So know that you can have your own private environment. Think about your thoughts, get them collected, get them, lined up with the truth of what's really happening. Because what we want to do really in this world is we want to share telepathically more in a positive support. Maybe in a negative situation, and we want to share how we're angry with a person, or we're upset with a person, or we'd like to see something different, or there's a problem or conflict. What if we're able to actually write that down, call them, tell them, video conference with them, have an open all the way communication with them so that you're able to discern the different parts, renegotiate the reality between you two, and then create a consensus together. And then for positive thoughts, we're going to talk about some of the wonderful uses of telepathy. But remember that start with telepathy with positive thoughts, loving thoughts, supportive thoughts. That will actually grow your telepathy much quicker, much more clearly, and people will be able to understand you more accurately. So let's talk about the advantages of sending the telepathy. This is from the speaker's point of view. You can share what's wrong, like we just talked about, right? You can share what's wrong, you can share what's right. A lot of times the listener might not be attuned. They're pretty attuned to listening to what's wrong, right, in society. I support society and all of us learning how to attune our hearing to what's right. So share both. Expressing what we need, expressing to our spouse and they're at the grocery store. I need some milk, honey. Will you bring, maybe not honey, but loving husband, I need some milk and some bread. Will you bring some home? Right? Something like that, that can clear it. The ability to speak to the living and the deceased, just like we were talking about earlier. So we can speak to, and quite honestly, we can speak to the living of plants, right? Animals. We talk to our animals all the time, telepathically. And they actually hear it, don't they? Our dogs, our cats, our birds, our animals, our horses, all different kinds of animals hear our telepathic abilities, right? It enhances productivity. And what do I mean by that? Well, if I can have a telepathic communication with somebody at the same time that I'm having a phone conversation with another person, at the same time that I'm having a video conference with another person, I can actually achieve multiple states of awareness, multiple states of communication at the same time, thereby folding time. I can get more done in less time if I'm on deadlines or in a time constraint environment. That's one example. We can optimize a shared vision, and this is my favorite part. I choose to really create telepathy with people all over the world to optimize a shared vision. Delivering telepathic communications messages really are useful. Let's talk for a moment about the advantages of receiving telepathy, right? When we receive telepathy, it can be a very, very useful tool too. So think about it now. We have to shift gears a little bit, and we have to go from the speaker of telepathy to the listener of telepathy, right? And most of us aren't used to that one. Even telepaths aren't used to that one. I get intrigued and I love it when I find another telepath in my world where I can actually have full-on conversations. And someone just pointed out to me earlier today about how we can have different kinds of telepathic communications and listening, where we talk to the higher self of the person, or we talk to the lower self, the physical body of the person. Sometimes people are a little disconnected from their higher self. Some aren't. So in those ways of communicating, remember when you're speaking, which part of the person are you speaking to? And then also, how can you support them in hearing what it is you have to say? Well, our first level of support, really, right, is a positive telepathic communication. Because when we send a positive one and they're attuned to listening to positive ones, right, they'll like tune in more. What's that person saying? Instead of, oh no, that I don't want to hear that person's mad at me, right? So we disengage from telepathic communications when they're not so positive. So let's start to talk about those advantages of receiving telepathy. Communication can take place at any time in any space. Now, this is an interesting construct, especially when supporting children with this idea. Us grown-ups are pretty well attuned to privacy issues. But children have less boundaries about privacy, and so don't really understand what it is. Also know that privacy somewhat is a duality concept. When we're in the oneness with each other, there really is no privacy, which is another topic altogether. And I want to share, though, in our dual world, where many of us are perceiving our realities of everyday life, it's vital, it's important when you start to set up telepathy to have acts of ethics, morals, and privacy with other people. Sometimes I check in and I see, are they sleeping? Yes, they're sleeping. Okay, I don't want to bother them because they might be very sensitive. Children are very sensitive to this. And so what happens is they wake up and they start to hear the communication. So what you want to do is really notice what's happening with the receiver's energy, and then take note and say, is this a good time? May I have a conversation with you? And if you feel or sense a no, then, say, okay, we'll talk later. If you feel or sense a yes, awesome. A lot of times the yes feels like the energy is just flowing. The other thing is faster and more accurate when the skills are honed. So we have the ability to speak in so many frequencies. We can speak with language, mind to mind. We can speak with light. We can speak with symbols. We can speak with metaphors. We can speak with colors. There's lots of different ways to speak telepathically to support the receiver. The fun part about it is there's no batteries required. There's no tech media required. We can do this to anywhere, anyone across the world. We can do it in or out of a physical body. So in that, what I mean by that is that we can talk to that which higher essences of ourselves, right? We can talk to the angels. We can talk to different energies that support us in helping us guide us through our day. It's time zone indifferent. So we can speak in the same time as if I was to speak with someone. I'm in California in the USA, and I can speak to someone in Australia in the next day and time in real time, just like we do on the telephone or in other media platforms. Also, we can give multidimensional clarity, and insight can be enhanced inside that communication. That means we can send an English language communication, mind to mind. We can also send an emotion that can be wrapped around in light or colors. We can send symbols and other things, because depending upon where the listener is attuned to listening, they can hear in different ways. So you can attune your speaking to the listener's, not just satisfaction, but to the listener's attunement of what it is they like to communicate best with. Now, how can telepathy be useful? We are deepening the clarity of one's thoughts when we transfer or transmit to another. In this idea, when we decide to bring telepathy to the board meeting, the teams on the board meeting can talk telepathically while the other one's presenting, to augment the meeting to this greater level of service between one another. We have an opportunity to let go of the old way of listening and speaking in old soup cans. I think this is like a 1950s representation of an idea of communicating. It was well before the telephone was developed, at least the cell phone for sure. And honestly, we can let go of this old way of communicating where the speaking and the listening is a little bit muffled. And we can bring in the idea to cleanse the earth of muffled, confusing communication between each other, and actually start to incorporate levels of telepathy for everyone all across the globe. How do we supercharge our telepathy? I'm so excited to share this part. So when we move into the awakening and the activating of our telepathy, we may supercharge our telepathic abilities by embodying an empowered state of being. And what do I mean by that? Remember when we talked about sending a telepathic communication and it was littered with a consciousness challenge? Well, when we conflict resolve and we release that consciousness challenge and we're more clear with the telepathic communication, what if we could wrap that telepathic communication not inside of pollution, but inside an empowering state? Literally, it's really awesome. One is beauty consciousness. So for example, we can, let's say I want to share with my sister how really genuinely beautiful she is. Not only physically, not only mentally, as the amazing attorney that she is and does amazing work for our country. Emotionally, she's beautiful. She shares her emotions so openly and honestly. It's just an amazing experience to witness with her. And then spiritually, she's so well connected to her trust and faith in the world, in God, that is all here to support her and our family. So what I did was I was very clear with my communication, but I enveloped it with beauty consciousness, expressing how beautiful I really sense she truly is. That's what we mean by embodying an empowered state of being. Another state of being, which my inner guidance called me to share on our TV show today, was journey. The journey is the destination consciousness. So really in that idea is that on my journey of learning how to telepathically send and receive communication between me and my loved ones and everyone I consider I'd like to focus on with that communication, I can envelop it with the journey is the destination, releasing lack consciousness, releasing time consciousness, releasing these ideas that I can fail consciousness, or the doubt that this will work. That's where I can embody journey is the destination. This other part that I wanted to share, which is called visionary consciousness. What if we can send telepathic communications and receive telepathic communications enveloped inside of the idea of visionary consciousness, where we can envision all of us talking with each other telepathically, appropriately, healthy, with great morals, ethics, lots of love. And when we have a conflict, we can communicate even more directly or utilize many platforms of communication to get really clear, to move to a level of heart-centered consensus consciousness. I'm so excited about this idea that we can really supercharge telepathy. And we can do that. We have a free ebook for you that's so amazing. It has 21 different ideas of, I wanted to share it. It has 21 different ideas of empowering yourself and empowering your telepathic communication. And we have a list of over 240. I really support you in noticing all the ways that you can create and embodying, literally emit empowered states of being to your world. You can find the free ebook and sign up for that on leapofconsciousness.com/empowerment. I invite you to go there and download this ebook and check this out and try it with all your friends and family. Just see and just open the idea of what they'll do. Maybe they'll call you. Maybe they'll write a letter. Maybe they'll email you or text you. Maybe they won't do anything at all and just absorb the love you sent. I encourage you to try this out and to develop your skills of telepathy. I am so excited to share today's work with you. I invite you to enjoy. Feel free to talk to me if you'd like. I'll tune in. Support me in helping me hear you by recognizing who you are and what love you have to share with the world. Thank you so much, everyone.